My name is Callum Rail, and for 11 years I worked a reclaimed water claim on the ash flats, a dead stretch of colony ground where the old war had burned the sky orange and never quite let it heal. Nobody came out that far unless they were desperate or stupid. I was neither. I was just old, and tired of towns, and I had something out there that made the loneliness worth it. I found them the first winter, half buried under a collapsed relay bunker 2 clicks off my claim line. 3 of them, starved down to hide and bone, from 3 different worlds that had never once shared a den before the war, scattered them all onto the same dying rock. A canid-shaped thing with iron-gray fur and a jaw built for things twice my size. A pair of reptile-skinned pups, armored plates still soft as fingernail, hissing at me with more fear than menace. And something smaller, quick and many-legged, that I never did get a clean look at until it stopped hiding under my coat sleeve. I dug them out because leaving them felt like something I couldn't carry home with me. I fed them because I had more rations than reasons to eat alone. I never trained them. I want that said plainly, because people who hear this story always ask what commands I used, what discipline I built. There was none. I talked to them the way you'd talk to anyone sharing your fire. They stayed because they wanted to. 11 years is a long time. The canid, I called her Senna, stood chest height to me now, her stride slow and deliberate, the way old soldiers walk. The reptile pups weren't pups anymore. Dre and Korth had grown into armored bulk that could shoulder open a bunker door, plates gone the color of wet slate, still following 2 paces behind Senna, the way they had as hatchlings. And the small one, Wick, had never stopped being fast, only gotten better at using it. They weren't a pack the way anyone back in town understood the word. They were mine, the way a family is, a family. Not because the blood matched, but because nobody left. Mornings on the claim had a rhythm by then, one I never had to teach and never once had to enforce. Senna woke first, always, and pressed her nose against the bunker door until I got up to open it, as if 11 years hadn't taught her the latch would give the same way every time. Dre and Korth took the perimeter without being asked, plotting the fence line with the unhurried patience of creatures who had never once been in a hurry about anything except each other's company. Wick rode my shoulder while I checked the water lines, small claws hooked light into the collar of my coat, chittering at anything that moved in the scrub. Strangers who'd heard rumors about my claim always pictured something fiercer than what they found. An old man boiling coffee, while a war beast the size of a transport crate slept with its head in his lap, twitching at whatever it dreamed about. The fierce part only ever showed itself when it needed to. That was the whole of the arrangement, unspoken and never broken. They gave me their mornings, and I gave them mine, and neither side kept score of it. The raiders came on a morning with no wind, which should have told me something was wrong before I ever heard the trucks. 4 of them, riding 2 skiffs low and quiet across the flats, led by a man who called himself Desson Vale, and wore a coat too clean for a man who claimed to live rough. He'd heard, he said, that an old man was sitting on a water reserve with no crew, no fence, and no fight in him. He smiled when he said it. He had the kind of face that smiled easiest when he thought he already owned the room. "You're alone out here," he said, stepping down off the skiff like the ground already belonged to him. "That's not smart, old man. That's just slow." I was crouched by the well housing, checking a valve seal, and I didn't stand up right away. "Walk back to your skiffs," I told him. "I'll say it easy. Once. After that, I won't say it again." He laughed. His 3 men laughed with him, because that's what crews do when the boss laughs first. One of them already had a hand on the well pump, ready to start draining 11 years of my work into their tanks. That was when Senna came around the bunker wall. She didn't growl. That was the thing people never understood about her. She didn't need to. She simply stopped in the open, ears forward, gray fur catching the flat morning light, and looked at Desson Vale the way you look at something you've already decided about. Dre and Korth came up on either side of her a heartbeat later, plates catching dull gleams, moving without a sound despite their size. Wick I never saw arrive. He was just suddenly on the roof of their skiff, folded low, watching. The man at the pump took his hand off it very slowly. Desson's smile didn't drop all at once. It went in stages. First surprise, then the calculation of a man trying to remember if he'd been told about this, and decided it wasn't worth mentioning. Then the particular kind of fear that comes from realizing you've already committed in front of witnesses. His men had gone very still behind him, One had started backing toward the skiff without seeming to notice he was doing it. "That's," he started. "They're mine," I said, and went back to the valve seal like the conversation was already over, because as far as I was concerned, it was. "Same as this water. You want either one, you'll have to go through them to get it, and they don't share my patience." Nobody moves fast on the ash flats without kicking up dust you can see for a mile, so I heard it before I looked. One of his men bolting for the second skiff, boots slipping in the loose grit. Dessen turned to shout at him to hold the line, and that was his mistake, because he turned his back on Senna for half a second, and half a second was more than she needed. She didn't kill him. I want that understood, because that was never what she was for. She hit him low and fast, took his legs out from under him, and had her jaw around his forearm, not closing, just holding, just proving she could, before he'd finished falling. Dre and Korth flanked the other two, close enough that their breath fogged in the cold morning air, close enough that both men dropped whatever they'd been reaching for without being told twice. Wick dropped from the skiff roof and simply sat on the ignition housing of their second vehicle, small and patient, making it very clear nobody was driving anywhere until Senna decided otherwise. Dessen lay in the dirt, with an armored jaw clamped gentle and absolute around his arm, looking up at four creatures that could have taken it off at the elbow and hadn't, and I watched something break in his face that had nothing to do with pain. It was the look of a man who'd built his whole reputation on being the one who walked into empty places and took what he wanted, finding out in front of his own crew that this place had never been empty at all. "Easy," I said to Senna, and she let go. Just like that. Stepped back, sat, tail curled around her paws, watching him the way you'd watch a spill you were waiting to see if someone would clean up themselves. Dessen didn't say anything clever on his way back to the skiff. He didn't say anything at all. His men wouldn't look at him, and he wouldn't look at them, and that told me everything about what his crew would remember when they told this story later. Not the water they hadn't taken, but the boss who'd been dropped in the dirt by an old man's pets, and hadn't so much as raised a hand in his own defense. They didn't come back. Word travels fast on dead ground, and within a season, my claim line had a reputation of its own, one I never had to defend twice. That evening, Senna came and lay her head across my boots while I ate, the way she'd done since she was small enough to fit in my two hands. Dre and Korth settled against the bunker wall behind me, plates ticking as they cooled from the day's heat, and Wick curled into the collar of my coat where he always slept, right against my collarbone, close enough to feel my heartbeat. People ask me sometimes why I never took a crew of my own, never fortified the claim the way the manuals say you should. I tell them the truth. I didn't need to build a wall. I'd already raised one, out of 3 creatures nobody else on that dying rock had wanted, and not one of them had ever once needed me to ask twice.